Hello everyone, and welcome back to Queen Elizabeth, A Day in Her Life. Today we're going to revisit Queen Mary, and this was when she was Princess May, and find out more about her and her family. We will begin when Princess Victoria suggests that Princess May and the family go into exile in Italy to get their finances in order. They were racking up quite a bill in London, and Queen Victoria didn't want to be their cash cow. The years 1883 to 1885, the Tecks were in Italy, and when the weather got too hot for the family, they would spend summers with the Württemberg royal family. When Princess May was grown up, she would go with her mother to St. Moritz, where the German royalty would go to. Princess May spent time in both England and Germany, so which country did she prefer? Well, May never had a doubt her favorite country was England. She thought the German houses were uncomfortable, and the etiquette at the small courts found constricting. And ever since she was young, Mary was very patriotic towards England. She wrote in May of 1892 to her old governess, Madame Bricke, "And alas, I have forgotten all my German, which makes me terribly shy. I think Württemberg a primitive place. They have no idea of comfort, and are so narrow-minded. Thank God I belong to a great nation." For all of the Duke and Duchesses of Teck's children, their father's theories of life formed, and an object lesson and learn how not to behave. Princess May's father's tantrums in public were just as embarrassing to her and as her mother's anxiety to make Princess May talk. Princess May was 16 at the time they were abroad. The embarrassment of her parents' bad finances led to her interest in the works of art and also in collecting, and they became part of her character. Princess May and all her brothers, except for Prince Frank, who was more like his mother, he had a happy-go-lucky attitude towards money, learned lessons from their parents, and it was never to live above one's income, and it also taught her how to sympathize with people who were not well off financially. During the time in Florence, May's mother realized what good sense May had, and she began to ask May's opinion on things. She would listen to May and follow her advice. Princess May, while there, started to study works of art and literature in Tuscany, and she never missed an opportunity to do self-improvement and self-discipline. And being shy, Princess May studied people and studied books. So the debt began right when Princess May's mother got married. She tried to economize in her way by keeping used paper from parcels, hoarding pieces of string in her bureau drawers at White Lodge, and snipping off any blank sheet at the end of a letter. But the bigger picture of how to save money, she didn't have any idea of what to do. She could never visualize money, and she didn't have an idea of where it came from and where it went. So they would innocently rely on others for help. Then came the time when their financial situation got out of hand. The family decided to try and help out by consulting with accountants, bankers, and lawyers. And when they figured out the debts, then something new would come up to increase the debt. And that's when they were asked to go and live quietly out of England. In 1865, Parliament granted the Duchess of Teck £5,000 a year, and Mary's mother added £2,000. And then the Tecks were making about £8,000 a year, but they spent more than £15,000 a year. And to set up house at Kensington Palace in 1866, they borrowed £8,000, and the debt from the White Lodge was £50,000. They owed £18,000 to local tradesmen, and these were the creditors who wanted to take down the Tecks houses, and that brought matters to a head. So that's when Princess Mary's family gathered to figure out what to do. So everybody thought that White Lodge should be given up and the Kensington Palace apartment shut up, and the Teck family to remove themselves and live modestly on the continent for a few years. The Duchess, instead of giving up White Lodge, was then having it redecorated. Princess Mary got mad at her brother, the Duke of Cambridge. Why would a wealthy brother persecute his younger sister when he could help her out of her difficulties? So that's how Princess Mary processed things. If he wouldn't help, she thought the country should come to her aid and double her allowance. She wanted to have it reported in the papers how her relatives were treating her. So Princess Mary, her family came up with the idea to raise money that they could by selling some of their German securities to lend it to Princess Mary Adelaide. The loan would be conditional with a written promise that the money be solely administered by responsible persons nominated by Mary Cambridge's family. White Lodge should be abandoned, Kensington closed, and the Teck family go to Frankfurt in a small apartment, or they could live as they wished as long as it was out of England. But the Tecks didn't care for that. They said they really didn't need the money, and that was when the Cambridges played their ace. They requested that Queen Victoria have a visit with Mary and then order her to go. Princess Mary told her side of the story to Queen Victoria, and she was very charming. So then Queen Victoria believed her side, and when someone tried to tell Queen Victoria the facts, Queen Victoria said to the person, "But I have it all from Princess Mary." In the end, though, Mary of Adelaide had to admit defeat. She was able to keep White Lodge and give Kensington back to the Queen, and then there was a public auction of the house's contents. Queen Victoria was concerned when she found out Mary and their family were going to live in Florence. She wrote to her, "It was with much regret that I heard you were gone to Florence, for living in a town full of attractions and temptations to expense made me very anxious. Some quieter and more retired spot would surely have been better." Queen Victoria had a right to be worried. Princess Mary was hiring carriages in which to parade in. She was giving dinner parties and appearing at the Royal Box at the opera and dancing in cotillions. She would wear a new gown and wore a tiara that had diamonds in it. It was one that she had refused to sell. Even though it appeared that they were having a blast there, the family felt uprooted. May's father felt like May was feeling sad and homesick for White Lodge. The Duke of Teck stated that the amusements, even in Italy, were expensive. He said the people were kind, but it didn't make their exile any easier. Princess May wrote to Prince Dolly, her brother, saying it was a rather dull place in Florence, and it was unimaginative, but she was to change her mind like her mother did weeks later. And then she said that Florence grows on you. The families of Teck and Cambridge always argued about the education of the children. Princess Mary's mother took financial responsibility for the 4 grandchildren's education. She said the boys must go to school, and Princess May's German governess, Fräulein Gutmann, be dismissed. She went on to be taught by French and Italian teachers and started to study foreign literature. It was then that May found her love of reading. Princess May noticed her mother wasn't interested in reading that much. She said that her mother, if she wasn't talking, she was trying to catch up with her correspondence, and she loved telegraphing. Princess May said that her mother would ask her and her brother what they were reading, and then when a clever man came to dine, and she said, Princess May did, that Mama talks brilliantly about the books she hasn't read, and they say, "It's remarkable how your Royal Highness can find the time to keep up with the literature of the day." So that was pretty funny. When they would go out to dinner, people who were with them had their own observations. Mrs. Janet Ross said about the Duchess of Teck that she took an interest in everybody and everything. She sang some old German song with wonderful verve and looked so handsome that I could hardly take my eyes off her. The princess was a remarkably attractive girl, rather silent, but with a look of quiet determination mixed with kindliness, which set her well for the future. And then there was an Irish painter named Thaddeus Jones, who was 23 at the time, and he was from Ireland, and he wrote, "As mother and daughter were inseparable companions, the shyness and reserve which distinguished the young princess was perhaps more marked by contrast with the open, genial manner of the Duchess. She possessed her mother's sense of humor and quickness of perception. Princess May was tall, slight, and graceful. Her features were like her mother's, but lacked the expressions that the Duchess had, which gave her such charm." Then a bad thing happened on the morning of March the 5th at the Hotel Paoli. The Duke awoke and found that he had suffered a severe paralytic stroke. Princess Mary, she didn't want to believe that her husband had a stroke, and said she wanted to say that he had a sunstroke or a chill. His left arm was paralyzed, his left leg almost useless for walking, and his mouth was slightly crooked. So that's what Princess May wrote to her brother Dolly several days after it happened. She said to him, "Happily, Dr. Baldwin thinks that in 3 or 4 weeks he'll be restored to the use of his various limbs, and he can already move his arm and can walk from his room to Mama's." She told her brother that she hadn't had time to write because they were all with their dad. Princess Mary wrote in her journal, "Francis walked about the passage and into his sitting room for the first time since his illness. Hurrah!" So those that saw the Duke later on noticed that his mouth and leg were now quite right, and his hand only still weak. And when it gets tired, it gets numb. And then the ambassador, Sir James Hudson, said that he was quite altered and an old man. The attack was a very severe one, and his memory went. And some even thought that his brain was softening, but that was an exaggeration. But he was a sick man. He was only in his 40s, and he became more touchy than ever, and he caused his wife and children anxiety. Princess May, who had always avoided being around people with illness, was forced to see it in her father. Princess May had love for her father. He had always indulged her. He was proud of her and took an interest in her appearance and her clothes. Princess May and her siblings had inherited the Duke's temper, but after what happened to her father, she was determined to be patient and not be flustered or annoyed by the Duke's changing moods. Princess May, when she was 17, she wore stiff corsets. I guess her mother was in the back of her mind, and she was determined to avoid gaining weight. When she was middle-aged, she did put on some weight, but she got it under control. She wasn't that tall, but she wore her hair up, and it made her look taller. Queen Mary didn't write much to her family members. I guess she was miffed at being sent away in the first place. Queen Victoria was losing patience with Princess Mary. Queen Victoria had written that she would let the Tecks have back their old apartment in Kensington if they would relinquish White Lodge. Mary didn't answer the letter. The Queen then telegraphed to ask snippily why her letter had not been answered, and she got a short telegraph in return. Gracious letter received. Answer follows. Queen Victoria was also upset that Princess May wasn't confirmed yet. The Duchess seemed to be avoiding doing it. If May wasn't confirmed, she couldn't be presented to court. She couldn't appear at balls or go in general society. And even Mary's parents and family wrote her about it. Confirmation was a serious event, and Princess May, being in the royal English family, it meant that she could be bestowed jewels and other gifts from family members. Mary wanted May to be confirmed in London, not in a small town like Florence. Mary's mom didn't approve of this, so on Princess May's 18th birthday, she was still unconfirmed, and Mary was determined not to lose White Lodge. When Princess May was 17, she got no presents from her English relations that she usually did, because Mary wanted May confirmed in the Chapel Royal. I will end the video with this standoff between the Duchess and her family for now. And it's been interesting to find out Mary's early days and how her and her family were forced to leave the country because the Duke and the Duchess were not able to handle their finances. The family didn't seem to change that much once they got to Florence. They couldn't help but entertain as they had in London. Princess May didn't like Florence at first, but later became to appreciate its beauty and wonderful weather, as well as the art and literature. Mary had fun there, like the Duke, but they wanted to get back to London. And it was funny when Queen Victoria got upset about being ignored. It didn't help Mary's cause. She seemed to be using Princess May's confirmation as a weapon to get what she wanted, a return to England. And we'll find out what happens in the next episode, if the ploy worked out or not. So I hope that everyone enjoyed the video, and if you did, if you could give it a thumbs up, it would be greatly appreciated. I also hope that everyone's been having a good day, and tune in again soon for another episode of Queen Elizabeth, A Day in Her Life. Thank you. Bye.